Hello, wildlings. I'm your Creepsmith, and you found my Fear Forge. Lucky you. The Hidden Game by Ballz2u95. Love that name. You know that feeling of a lingering presence during solitary moments? Everybody gets it. I'm sure you have too. What you probably haven't done is try to explain why it happens. See, here's the thing. I had this feeling a few nights ago when I was in my room trying to go to sleep. I had laid down, curled up facing the wall, which my bed is positioned next to. I slowly but surely felt something stand up behind me. I mean, everybody feels this at some point in their lives. It felt like it was lording over me, staring at me to no end. The funny thing about human psychology is that it absolutely hates unknown things, fears them, which is why we try to come up with an explanation for everything, including seemingly enigmatic events. So, being the creative wizard that it is, my brain tried to associate this figure with a face. Unfortunately, I was somewhat terrified, so my brain, as any brain would, decided to combine the figure and the sense of fear together to give the figure a face that would warrant such fear. The brain can't create faces, so it copies and pastes parts of any face you'd see from anywhere. But given this context, it would usually think up the most nightmare-inducing face you've ever seen. Also, given the context, this horrifying figure would be standing right behind you. Usually at this point, rational thought would take over. You try to reason with yourself as to why your worst nightmare isn't standing right behind you. It would usually work, and at times where it didn't, you would usually muster whatever courage you have and turn around to look behind you. Well, at least that's what I did. And as expected by both myself and I'm sure you, nothing was there. This is usually followed up by reinforcing yourself with proof as to why there couldn't be anything behind you. I never heard the door open, and I never heard footsteps are usually the common ones in this scenario. You'd laugh at yourself for being stupid, and then you'd just go back to sleep. This is the common thought pattern associated with the eerie feeling of being watched. There's probably a branch of psychology dedicated to this feeling, seeing as it's ridiculously widespread. One thing that I can be certain about is that this feeling always ends due to what is known as lex parsimoniae. This is better known as Occam's razor. It states the simplest explanations are usually the best, and in situations such as my own, we can usually create explanations that are wonderfully wrapped in a package of rationality and reason. And that is exactly what'll get you killed. Have you ever thought about why you get these feelings? Not many people really do in the moment. The downside of Occam's razor is it blinds people from seeing another side to these events. To your average human being, for something to truly exist, it would need to conform to the laws of nature. If someone right next to us decided to fly around, we'd almost definitely doubt our own sanity before we believe that this person is actually flying around. But what if this watcher doesn't conform to any laws? What if the reason I didn't hear the figure was because it could fly, or at the very least, hover at will? What if the reason I didn't hear the door was because the figure can move through objects at will? What if the reason I didn't see the figure was because it can render itself imperceptible at will? At this point, you'd be asking yourself where the evidence for this figure's existence could be. But why would such a being, one that can defy every law of nature at will, leave evidence? I mean, if it is trying to frighten me in some way, I see no reason for it to leave traces of itself so that we can conclude that it exists. Perhaps it was only there that night to acquire the description of the face that I fear most, and that what we normally recognize as the feeling of being watched, well, that's simply a tool used by this figure to extract a facial design that we're terrified of. And what could it do with this? It could make it a reality. By now, you should have realized that there is absolutely no reason to deny this thing's existence. The only reason we would deny it is due to the figure posing as a complex explanation to the feeling that someone is watching, rather than a simple one. I don't know you. I don't know who you are or where you are, but I hope you understand that the next time you suddenly get the thought that someone or something is watching you, just remember you're playing the hidden game, and there's nothing you can do about it. And isn't that the worst kind of fear? That feeling of helplessness, of knowing that you can't do anything to change something? I know it is for control freaks. I wouldn't know anything about that. Stay scary, my wildlings, and make the most of your nights.